Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you're all enjoying your first day at ETHDenver. Really excited to be here. I'm Bhushit. I'm Harshal, and this is Bhushit. And yeah, we're here to talk about agentic commerce, the challenges in this space, the opportunities, and how we've come up with a solution that we think can help scale micropayments. So, the internet for the last 30 years was kind of built for just one customer in mind, right? Humans. And then we built interfaces and payment rails with humans in mind. Even the monetization schemes were catered towards humans. So you had your subscription models, you had your ad revenue models. But with the advent of autonomous agents, there's a new customer, right? And these AI agents, they don't really see ads, nor do they subscribe to any tools. So how do you monetize for this new customer base, right? Well, to truly unleash the power of and the potential of these AI agents, you need to empower them with the ability to access whatever data they need whenever they need. And they consume data and information at a rate that humans just cannot consume. So you could give them your credit card details or provide your subscription API keys. Oh, sorry. Well, I'll just give this a
Yeah,
moment.
well, I think we tried it out earlier and it worked, so maybe let's give it one more shot. Says mirroring. Mirroring. Let's try again. Nope.
We good?
Just the regular AV issues.
Oh,
Let's see if we can start over. No.
No. It popped up for a sec. What's your screen reader say? Choose content. Let's see if we can.
Do you want me to do a window? Will that work better?
Go change choose content over here.
No, nothing shows up at all.
Oh, it's not.
You had it directly in here before, didn't you?
Yeah, I did. It was not changing slides.
Okay.
So then.
Let's try it again.
Oh, the desktop. That's weird.
That's connected? Yeah. We'll do it.
Fun stuff. It's okay. You can just say, let's start over. It's okay. Usual issues. We have a bigger audience.
all right.
So.
Well, I'm glad this didn't happen before the live demo. So yeah, let's get started again. As I was saying, yeah, with the advent of autonomous agents, there is this need for a new payment infrastructure to sort of pay for, to help and empower these AI agents pay for the content and the data that they need, and at this frequency and scale at which they operate. So why micropayments then? Let's think of a typical autonomous agent. Consider you're interacting with a deep research agent. You give the agent your query. The agent's first step is probably scraping through a few thousand URLs. Some of those may be behind a paywall. And you probably have subscriptions for a few of those, like, I don't know, like a New York Times or a Wall Street Journal subscription. But then the agent needs to access some content for which you do not have a subscription for. And there is no way that you can preemptively guess what data your agent needs in generic cases like these. So what do you do in that case? If you do not provide the ability for the agent to access that paywall data, the quality of your research is going to be subpar. And let's think of it from the point of view of the content creator and the content provider as well, right? They built this paywall to cater for humans. And now there's this increasing customer base of AI agents who are trying to access this data that they have, and there's no way for them to monetize it. They're losing out on this potential customer if they keep paywalling and restricting access. Now, how do you solve for this? That's where micropayments come into the picture, because these agents, they want to access a particular article or a particular subset of data, and the content provider can make it available for them at a fraction of a cost of a subscription. But, and that's where the micropayments come into the picture. Now, you ask me, how can this interaction work? Well, it turns out uh, it's always been there. In the original HTTP spec, you had an error code called 402, payment required. The original authors always had this intention, or they had envisioned that payments would flow over HTTP someday, but the rails just weren't there. Now, with crypto and blockchain, it's possible. So enter X402. So as long as you have an agent that has a crypto wallet, and the merchant or service provider can process or support blockchain payments, you solve for this paywall access problem. So no need for API keys, or no need for the agents to sign up as they go. They see a paywall content, they see what the payment requirements are, sign a transaction, request it with the cryptographic header again, and then you get the data. And this is no futuristic vision. As I'm sure some of you know, um, right now, this is the reality. Currently, 161 million transactions have been processed with a net volume of $44 million. And this is just over the last 6 months, and it's growing. So what's the challenge of scaling this? Well, if for one, the problem is bottleneck of gas. We talk about these micropayments and subcent denomination transactions. Blockchains and stablecoins, in theory, actually can enable even lower denomination transactions. So you go from the 1 cent to $1 transactions all the way down to nano payment territory, which is 1 microcent. But the problem is gas fees. When you try to like settle a 1 microcent transaction on chain, you're paying a gas fee in thousands of magnitude higher compared to the actual transaction value. And if you start scaling this over hundreds and thousands of transactions, you're just paying this. The economics just don't work. So let's look at some numbers. These are like average transaction fees. And if you see at 1 cent level, the fees are still a significant chunk or of significant value compared to the actual transaction amount. And it only gets worse as the number as you load the denomination of the transaction. But network fees and gas fees are important because they prevent abuse and spam. And then there's also this other problem of network congestion. The scale at which these AI agents operate is, is so large that you can clog the network very easily. And we want we wanted to come up with a solution that solves for all of these challenges. So what we've done is our solution separates on-chain finality with off-chain payment intent. And what I mean by that is we can see that from the video that from a live demo that we're showing. So I'll pass it on to Bhushit for that.
Thank you for the setup, Harshal. So let's take a look at the live demo, the fun stuff. So here, let me walk you through what you're seeing. So on the left side, we have set up a bunch of agents. All of them are on different chains. They have different wallets. Now, each of these chains have different finality and different gas requirements. On the right side, you see merchants. Merchants are accepting payments on all of these different chains. Well, a merchant needs to accept payments on all of these different chains because you don't want to potentially lose out a customer just because you don't support a chain. Like agent can be on a chain which you don't support, and that's a potential lost customer for you. We make this integration very easy with like just a few lines of code without having to deal with all the on-chain integrations, and we'll dive into that later. Let's start some microtransactions between both of these parties. So as you can see, these are live microtransactions happening right now between agents and merchants, randomly between any agent and any merchant. The thing which I want you to see is on the left side. On the top here, you have gas paid. And in this session, we have seen what, like 500, 600 transactions. The gas paid is absolutely zero. And we are operating at a very small payment amount here, which is 0.000001, which is what we call microcent. The gas savings, the number of gas saving is much higher than the actual value transferred in the session. And let's look at it in percentage form. That's like hundreds of thousands of magnitude of the payment value itself. Well, to be fair, the value we are transferring is very small. So let's change it. Let's go to 1/10 of a cent. And you will see that even at 1/10 of a cent, it's a meaningful percentage of gas savings. And even at 1 cent, you will see this scale the same way. Like it's gonna save you gas. So let's stop this for a second. Gas is only one part of the story. By using this kind of a solution, you don't need to worry about gas and enable like nano payments from micro payments level. On the right side, you will see these are the responses from our settle endpoint in X402. One thing to note is all of these are happening on different chains, but the latency is consistent across the board. So regardless on whichever chain you're using, you can see that the latency stays the same. And this is great for the sellers because now they don't need to wait for on-chain finality, and they can just reliably get a response in a few hundred milliseconds and unlock whatever the merchant was buying. And overall, for both buyers and sellers, you can create a consistent user experience because you can be guaranteed to get a response in a few hundred milliseconds regardless of the chain of your choice. And lastly, I think now the merchant got paid, right? It got money across all of these different chains. Great. We got some money. The problem is fragmented liquidity. Now you have USDC spread across different chains. Now you need this money to do different things. You want to consolidate it many times. And often that requires like bridging, rebalancing, etc. But that's where Circle Gateway comes in. Both these merchants and agents are set up with gateway wallets. So then you can consolidate liquidity across chain. Let's take an example here. I'm going to move liquidity from base Sepolia and Avalanche. Let's say I'm going to move $5. and consolidate it onto our testnet. And this is possible for like 13 chains which Gateway supports, including Solana. I'm going to open up the mint transaction. You can see it was confirmed within less than 500 milliseconds. We've minted 5 USDC from 2 different chains to my merchant wallet. And that's it for the demo.
All right. To recap the features of our solution, yeah. So what we have here is transaction sizes. So our solution supports transaction sizes of value as high as your blockchain supports and to as low as 1 microcent, right deep into the nano payments territory, right? Which was not possible because gas fees are very high. Then you don't pay gas. So it's gas free. So both the buyer and the seller do not pay gas at a per transaction level. Third, an important feature is you get instant liquidity across chains. For merchants, you, you can easily manage your capital across different chains and avoid the problem of fragmented liquidity. And finally, it's X402 compatible. So the demo that you saw, the interactions between the agents and the merchants was happening using the X402 workflow that most of you are familiar with. Now, let's take a look at how it actually works. So we have this hybrid architecture where we do off-chain aggregation of these transactions, and we decouple it from the on-chain finality. Now, to take a deeper dive, what ends up happening is the agent initially deposits some money into the gateway contract. Think of it as your spend limit, right? It could be per session, for 7 days, for every month, what have you. Then it interacts with a seller in the regular X402 form. And once the seller receives a payment intent from the buyer saying, hey, I want to access this resource for 1 cent, and they sign that EIP 3009 authorization, the seller can either directly call our APIs or through their facilitator. Here's where the key component is. Once the once we receive this EIP 3009 authorization, we verify the signatures. We verify whether the buyer has enough balance to support the transaction and immediately deduct that amount from the off-chain balance of the buyer. This prevents double spend, and we return a success in about 200 to 500 milliseconds. After that, the seller is free to provide whatever resource the buyer requested. And that's because Circle guarantees at that point that the seller will be paid the money that the buyer promised. And then on the Circle side, we aggregate all of these batch transactions into a single batch inside a trusted execution environment and broadcast one single transaction on chain periodically. This also prevents network logging, and it helps prorate the gas costs across thousands of these transactions. Next. This is your regular X402 flow. So you have your buyer, you have your seller, the facilitator, and the blockchain. And let's move on to the next slide. And this is where our solution fits in to the X402 flow. The use case is the same. The buyer is trying to access a resource that is paywalled from the seller. And now the first step is, you deposit into the gateway contract, and then the buyer requests a resource from the seller. Upon receiving the payment intent from the buyer, the seller calls the facilitator or our APIs directly, and we verify whether the payment is valid or not. Note that they no longer have to call the verify endpoint. The settle endpoint is all you need to do because our settle endpoint is so fast that once we verify whether the authorization is valid or not, the seller is free to return the resource to the buyer. And from there, Circle basically aggregates all these transactions and then aggregates it, like I mentioned earlier, broadcasts it on chain, and once this transaction is confirmed on chain, the seller is free to use the money that they were promised, and and then consolidate it across chains like Bhushit showed in the demo. And that's the flow. So what's next, and who is this for?
So we build a solution for a variety of audiences. Like one is facilitators. Facilitators already add a lot of value-added services in the X402 ecosystem. This is another feature they could add. Just by within a few lines of code, they can offer gas-free payments to all the people who use their facilitator. Additionally, like we spoke throughout the session, it's for agents who don't want to spend gas and can instantly settle across chains. Well, for service providers, it's an interesting one because now you can monetize your services up to 1 microcent, and that enables new business models that you can come up with. For chains, it's an important one because you want to serve these new customers, which are AI agents, but you don't want to clog your network. So this allows you to bring gas-free nano payments to your own chain. And lastly, this is something we learned through discovery and like talking to a bunch of folks. I think right now we have been speaking through an agentic lens all throughout the talk, but by talking to developers in the ecosystem, we learned many people are creating apps for price-sensitive audiences, and they want to use this beyond agentic use cases in their own apps. It's available right now on 12 testnet chains. We are always growing USDC and our solutions on multiple different chains. You can get early access. So you can scan this QR code and fill out a very small form. Just describe your use case, and within a few days, our team will reach out to you with early access. Thank you.